It's autumn time in Ireland, and this time of the year has traditionally been the hardest time of the year for me. Talk about seasonally affected depression, or SAD. Autumn time, September, October, this time of the year has been the hardest time for me. Change in the skyline and the light does affect me. I mean, today is a classic example. It's very overcast and grey. It's just basically completely grey, and the temperature is just about churning, so it's just about okay to be in a t-shirt and shorts. And I'm holding out as long as possible because it's a psychological kind of surrendering of the summer when I get out of that and have to kind of wrap up again. September, October, that beginning of autumn's been the toughest time of the year for me traditionally, and I think partly it's programming as well over the years. It's ever since I was young, it was the time for going back to school in September, and even though, I mean, school wasn't a horrific experience for me, it was a reasonably enjoyable experience. That feeling of going back to school, there was a sense of dread about it, and it was a sense of two things: drudgery beginning and the end of the promise of summer, and the kind of the death of all of that promise and hope of summer. I always probably over romanticized it in terms of the opportunity and the freedom, and that's what it represented to me more than its reality, it's probably fair to say. And as that died into September and autumn, that added to that feeling of kind of dread and the starting of going into being sucked into winter. In Ireland and northern countries, that is an issue. Just that grey overcast sky and the change from having a lot of light and the contrast between the lengths of days as well. Change does inevitably have an effect on you. Now, successfully, I managed to overcome it for the very first time ever last winter. So that was the autumn winter of 2020. The way I overcame it was through cold sea swimming. It was the most effective way that I had of disrupting that cycle that had been happening. I mean, for me, springtime is the kind of rebirth, and you see buds breaking out in the soil and flowers growing. Feeling used to fill me with a kind of a sense of hope and optimism, and some warmer days are ahead when you could get out there and into the sun and into the fresh air as much as possible. Now, the reality is you can do that any time of the year. That's something that I know now. Winter sea swimming was a way for me to take this issue that I had, a cycle of dreading the autumn and the inevitable drive into winter. And what that associated with, particularly in Ireland, is a sense of maybe retreating indoors a bit more, warmer and cozier, and kind of fight against the cold that was coming. And by winter sea swimming, it was disrupting that in the most extreme way possible by going in the other extreme, by stripping off and jumping to shorts, jumping into the cold sea and embracing the cold head on rather than avoiding it. And it was extremely effective because I learned for the first time that actually not only can you stay outdoors and embrace nature as much in the winter, but I can actually go the other extreme, and I love the cold. There's an adrenaline rush associated with hitting cold water in some of the coldest days, and the coldest was, I think, about January, and I think it was 4.5 degrees or maybe 5 degrees in sea point. So the water temperature was probably about 6, and then at sea point locally the cold ground cools the water even further, so it was absolutely freezing, and I did it. And the sense of achievement was massive for me, because not only the fact that I was getting in and swimming, but it was just such a disruption from previous cycles where I would retreat from the cold. This was me embracing it full on. There was a certain novelty associated with it. Every day would be that little bit colder. It was a bit more of a challenge, and it was a matter of taking it on more. The plan is to do the same this winter. With that novelty somewhat waned, that I'll still be able to take on the challenge as much. That was an interesting thing that I was thinking about recently. I've managed to disrupt that cycle, but wondering why that cycle happened in the first place, and why people suffer from seasonally affected depression. There is that factor of the lack of light, and people use light lamps and things, but is part of it our programming and this kind of seasonal programming, that it's kind of the end of a free summer period, and then it's back to the kind of drudgery of work and school and all that kind of thing. Even though I've long left school, that overhang of that back to school thing is still there. And it's something that's programmed so deeply into children that I think we have it forever nearly sometimes. It's important to go into the period with optimism. That's the plan this winter.